Dr. Jazz.
Thanks for taking the time. Appreciate it.
Jazz.
No problem. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you know, I have you on so many records, and I really love your work also as a band leader. And I wanted to start this talk by asking you, like, if you're preparing something new on that front, or I mean, I've listened to 400. I want to touch that one as well, so many times, and it's like such a beautiful project. But like, you know, is something new coming up soon, or?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I've got a new release. It's coming out June 14th. It's a double quartet. It's called I Am My Neighbor's Keeper. And I have, you know, bass, drums, piano. I've got Bilophone, who also plays African percussion, and I've got a string quartet.
Whoa,
But I also have a African dancer as well. And he actually, I have videos of him in the studio. We did some performances here in Massachusetts. It was part of a New England Foundation for the Arts grant that I got in order to do this project. And the first performance was in a correctional facility. So, you know, so we performed it in a jail. Then the next day we performed it in a historically Black church, which just happens to be the church that I grew up here in Springfield, Massachusetts. And it was actually a church that was, they were building it in the white area when President Obama was elected in 2008. And when he was elected, 3 guys, racists in Springfield, burned the church down as, you know, they were building it. It was a whole thing, made national news, and it was crazy. They caught the guys and they rebuilt the church. Governor Deval Patrick, who was the first Black governor of Massachusetts, came. They had a big ceremony. So anyway, we performed the project there, and then we performed it at a community music school in Springfield. And then we went into the studio and performed the compositions that I had written. And we had an African dancer on the performances, and we also had the African dancer in the studio just to keep the vibe going. And it was, you know, it was really cool. And, you know, the music is varied, you know, in terms of, you know, my playing, and the whole purpose of it, as I said, is the title of it is it's Avery Sharpe double quartet, I Am My Neighbor's Keeper, just sort of reminding us of, you know, especially like over the last 40 years, especially, you know, in America, the political climate has gotten to the point where, you know, people are not like they used to be. They used to be more concerned for their neighbor. And now it's like you're in my camp or you're not. You know, if you're rich, it's because God wants you to be rich. And if you're poor, you're a bad person or whatever, you know. If you're, you know, if you love somebody of the same sex or look at the world different, then something's wrong with you. And it's just kind of reminded, you know, just doing the project, just trying to remind us of our humanity.
Yeah.
You know, so that's the new project that I've got coming out. We recorded, like I said, we recorded it last year. We did a few performances, and it was recorded in April, May of 2023, and it'll be out June 14th of 2024.
Oh, fantastic. Who's the band? I mean, who do you have in the group?
I have Euron Israel on drums.
Oh, wow, beautiful.
Zakai Curtis on keyboard. I've got cat who plays bilophone and African percussion, Tony Vaca, on that. And then I have a string quartet, Sarah, Kaylee, David, and Gregory, and the dancer is Bisco.
Beautiful. Oh, you and Joran. Yeah, I love that. Your connection. You have such a strong story going on. as a rhythm section. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's a good. I think it's a nice project. It's a little different, you know. It's a little string heavy, but I like strings. Gosh,
Oh yeah,
I'm a string player. What can I
sure.
say?
Yeah. How do you approach this one, writing wise? Or I mean, in general, like, what's your story when composing? You know?
Well, as I said, you know, every writer is different. You know, I kind of have to. I like to have a theme. If you notice, most of my recordings sort of have a theme, and then I kind of write from there. So, you know, I am my neighbor's keeper. You know, the titles are like, my friend, don't be afraid to ask for help. Um, um, Compassion.
Yeah.
You know, I see you. You know, those are the kind of things that, you know, that I was writing. So, you know, it's whatever I hear when I think of compassion. You know, when I think of I see you. And, you know, using the xylophone with the strings, it's kind of a different kind of mix. You know, you got kind of this jazz African world kind of thing happening. And, you know, I mean, and, you know, when people hear it, they're like, well, you know, I sent it to, I think my publicist, and the first reaction was, I hear a lot of McCoy Tyner. I said, well, yeah, I mean, McCoy has, you know, has had a great big effect on me. I mean, you can't work 20-something years straight with a guy, you know, do over 25 recordings with him without it having some kind of effect on you and your thought and your sound and, you know, the way I look at music.
Yeah. Did you with McCoy ever talk about composition also? Like how he approached it?
Would McCoy talk about compositions?
Yeah, when you were in his group. I mean, did you ask him how he does the writing, or like how he wrote
No,
something?
you know, I never really had to ask him, because I think he already knew that that's kind of where I was. Well, I mean, I guess that's why we're together for so long. He knew that that's where I was coming from. For instance, I don't know if you know a piano player, Harold Mayburn. Used to work with Wes Montgomery.
Oh,
great guy.
Sure.
And one year, we were at the Village. We were at the Village Vanguard. This might have been like in the 1990s. And at the end of the set, Harold comes over and goes, "Man, that was a great bass line." He goes, "Was that your bass line or was that McCoy's bass line?" And I had to stop for a second, and I said, "Oh," I said, "that was my bass line, but I think that's what he would have played." We were just, the tune kind of went into a different direction. I tagged his bass line on a vamp that he had, and then it kind of struck me. I was like, "Yeah, I never thought about it." I mean, you know, if that wasn't the bass line, I gave it the bass line that he might have put it in there, or he trusted me enough to let me play whatever it is that I wanted to play, knowing that it would still be in the idiom or the vein that where he's coming from.
Yeah.
You know, he always knew that I had a great deep respect and love for his music. That's why we were together for so long.
Yeah. 27 years, man. Yeah, that's incredible. That's a long one. Do you remember the first gig, by the way? Since I mean, I wanted to ask you about McCoy, but since we're talking about him, how did you end up playing with him? I mean, I know you started. I have so many records. I have
man, that's a long story.
Oh, please, come on. That's why we're here.
That's a long story. You know, my first, people always think it's McCoy Tyner put me on the map, but it was actually Archie Shepp.
Yeah.
And Max Roach, because they were my professors at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst in the mid-70s when I first got into, you know, quote unquote jazz. So they had a big influence on me in terms of my thought process, in terms of the seriousness of the music, especially Max. And Reggie Workman, obviously used to play with John Coltrane, was my first upright bass teacher.
Really? Oh man, wow.
Yeah, he was coming up from Brooklyn, I think, at the time, a couple times, and a couple days a week from New York. And well, by today's standards, I started upright relatively late. I didn't start upright until I was 19 years old. Well, till I was in college. I played electric at 16, and I started piano when I was 8.
Wow.
But by today's standards, that's really late. But I just really dove into it head first and went crazy. And so Reggie Workman was my first bass teacher. I mean, he taught me everything from, because I didn't know a jack about upright bass. So I studied with him for a year, and a lot of stuff that he taught me didn't really sink in until 2 or 3 years later, after I got a certain amount of facilities. As a matter of fact, it was funny. When I first started playing, the first year, 2 years, when older guys would see me play, they would say, "Man, you sound like Reggie Workman." And I'd be like, "Well, yeah, he was my first bass teacher." So anyway, I had Reggie Workman, Archie Shepp, and Max Roach, some other great professors here, Fred Tillis, who started the jazz department, Horace Boyer, who's a great gospel singer, and Archie. All those cats kind of took me under their wing. And as a matter of fact, I called my parents because I said, "Man, Archie Shepp is spending a lot of time with me, and so is Horace Boyer." And my father said, "Well, obviously they see something in you that you're not seeing." Because the first year I started playing upright, I would go to Archie's house and he would play piano, and we would play a tune, and he would go, "No, man, Jimmy Garrison would have played it like this." He would play, the bass line on the left hand. So Archie was the first guy to take me to Europe.
Really?
On tour in
When
the
was
late 70s.
Okay.
Yeah. Say again?
No. Well, when was that? Yeah,
I didn't hear what
you
you said.
answered it. Yeah.
It was in the late 1970s, like October 1970. Still actually working a day gig. I was an insurance claims adjuster because my undergraduate degree is in economics. I minored in music, but everyone thought I was a music major because I did so much playing.
Really? Wow.
But, since I was a music minor, I didn't, I wasn't like education major or a performance major. I didn't have to take these particular courses. These are, he's minor, let him take anything he wants. So everyone thought I was a music major, but actually I was a music minor, and my undergraduate degree in economics. And University of Massachusetts in Amherst is not like when you get an economics degree from there, especially in the 70s, it was much more radical Marxist. You weren't going to go work on Wall Street. It's a little more abstract thinking, which is the way my brain works anyway. So anyway, I still was doing my day gig, and Archie took me to Europe in the October of 1979. It was the Attica Blues big band. He had done
that one. Yeah, okay.
He had done Attica Blues back in 1972 or 1973 for the prison riot that happened in Attica, New York, and that was really a terrible situation with Rockefeller and Governor Rockefeller and Nixon, and anyway, it was just really a horrible situation. So Archie wrote did an album about the Attica Blues in the early like 72, 73, and he revisited that in 1979, and I was part of that. And it was a 30-piece big band that he took to Europe. It had Marion Brown on saxophone, Steve Torre was trombone, Clifford Jarvis on drums. God, it was a lot of cats, a lot of great. Patience Higgins, John Purcell, Akua Dixon, played cello. It was Steve Torre at the time. There's a lot of people. Terry Janor, vocals. It was Jolie Wilson was on vocals as well. Charles Greenlee on trombone. Bunch of cats, and that was my first. So it was a lot. That was my first tour with a lot of young cats, and it was a lot of more seasoned people who as well. And we recorded a record at Palais de Glace, I think, in Paris.
Yeah, I have that one. Yeah.
And we were supposed to do 3 nights of recording, and they did 2 nights so they didn't record the 3rd night. But we did a performance the 3rd night, and Clyde Kreiner, the keyboard player, it was another piano player, acoustic player, Art Matthews, and Clyde Kreiner was playing keyboard, and he had written a calypso that the band was playing. And so he started the calypso, and I was playing electric on that one, not upright. And I started playing the calypso, and all of a sudden I said, "Wow, Clifford Jarvis is playing something really cool tonight. I look over, and it's Art Blakey. He's sitting in with a band. And so after the concert, that was the first time I met James Williams, the pianist. He came over to me and said, Art wants to meet you. And, he's really excited. He wants to meet you. And so, I went over, I met Art, and he said, dig what you're doing, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, when I get ready to change my band, I want you to be my bass player. And I was like, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, he's not going to call me. And as a matter of fact, I told Charles Greenlee, I said, Charles, he's not going to call me. And Charles looks at me, goes, if he said he's going to call you, he's going to call you. So the tour is over. I go back, I'm doing my day gig. Archie gives me a call. He wants me to come back to Europe with him in January.
Oh.
And I'm still doing my day gig now. I still haven't left my day gig. So we go to Europe. And during that time, the phone system's not like now. You got WhatsApp and phone. You can just hit anybody anywhere in the world. You had to, especially in Italy at the time, the phone system was horrible. Sure. And so I went to the post office to call home in the middle of the tour. And I call home and my wife goes, Art Blakey called. He wants you to join his band. I was like, what? She goes, yeah, he wants you to join his band. And so, I'm on tour with Archie, and then a couple of weeks later I get back. And, Art, I went down to New York, and they were playing at McKell's. As a matter of fact, and Curtis Lundy, bass player, he was playing with Betty Carter at the time. He helped me with the book. So, he had the bass book and, showed me what was happening. And the first night that I played, Wynton Marsalis, 18 years old, sat in with the band. And that was the first time I met Wynton. He was just got to New York, and it was really cool. So, I did the gig, and then I think we did a couple other gigs, and then we came up to Massachusetts and in Boston, and we played at Lulu White's, a club that was pretty cool. And at the time, Donald Harrison, Branford Marsalis, Kevin Eubanks, Marvin Smith, all those cats were in school at Berkeley at the time. And Kevin Eubanks and Donald Harrison came in and sat in with the band. Okay. And Wynton and Branford convinced Wynton to come up to Boston, and Wynton again, played with the band the entire weekend. It was pretty cool. And that was the first time I met Terry Lynn Carrington. I knew her father, but she was like 14. Yeah. And I remember she and I were in the dressing room, and this 14-year-old kid says, oh, yeah, I wonder if Art's going to let me sit in tonight. And I'm thinking to myself, this child must be, a little delusional. She thinks that she's going to be able to sit in with on. So at the end of the night, Art calls her up. She gets on the drums and kills it. And I'm like, good Lord, like I said, I knew her father, Sonny, but I didn't really know her, So anyway, Art and McCoy had the same agent, Jack Whittemore. I think Jack might have handled Miles Davis or something like that. And Charles Framborough, who was playing bass with McCoy, left. And I heard about it, and I called Jack Whittemore. I said, Jack, I heard that McCoy's bass player left. Would you ask him to give me a call? He said, but you're playing with Art. I said, yeah, I know, but just ask him to give me a call. And he called me, but he called me at my day gigs. We kept missing each other. So not to make things a little longer, but I'm still doing my day gig. And I told Art, I said, Art, I'm going to join your band, but I need a month to get my act together at my day gig. I can't just pick up and leave. So I can do like the weekends. We had just been doing weekends. It was fine. So the last night that I'm playing with Art Blakey at Lulu White's in Boston was on Sunday night. Art goes, okay, we're getting ready to go to, I don't know. I think he said, we're getting ready to go to Cleveland on Tuesday. And I said, Art, man, I told you I can only do weekends. I can't do, I still need a month to get my act together with my day job. And Art just kind of loses it, goes off, just starts going. It goes, Bobby, I don't know what's wrong with these bass players. He's just going on and on. And while he's doing that, and this was before everybody had cell phones. So while Art is just carrying on and going off, the bartender comes and goes back to the dressing room. He goes, Avery, there's a call for you at the bar.
Oh man, come
So
on.
I pick up the phone.
Oh,
It's McCoy Tyner. He goes, yeah, I've been trying to get a hold of you. Can you make a rehearsal tomorrow, or rehearsal audition? Because he'd been hearing about me, but he had never heard me. I said, I guess so, because Art is just canceling on me. And so I went down the next day to New York, took the day off from work. McCoy actually flew me down, and I got in the rehearsal, and I could not play the first tune. I destroyed it. I just sucked. It was a festival. Festival in Bahia has a lot of drums. Intervals. Boom, be doo, be bo, boo, booty, boo, doo, bo, doo, be bo, be doo, be doo, bo. And I couldn't play the tune. I just jacked it up. When he gave me the chart, I was like, Jesus Christ, what is this? And so I remember thinking that after I messed up the tune, I was thinking, well, Mr. Tyner, you wasted your money bringing me down here. I'm just jacking your music up. And then he called another tune, and then I nailed that. And then we were cool. And I told him the same situation. I said, McCoy, I had the same situation with Art. I need about a month to get my act together at my day gig. I can do the weekends. He goes, yeah, we got a gig coming up this weekend in Ann Arbor, Michigan. It might have been the University of Michigan or something. But we did 2 nights there.
Mm.
And the second night, McCoy, comes over taking care of business and stuff like that. And he looks at me. He goes, I've been talking to my wife about you. He said, I got a really good feeling about you. He said, I think we've been put together for a reason.
Mm.
And that kind of blew my mind, because I'm like, Jesus, this is the great McCoy Tyner thing, of saying that, he's got a good feeling about me, that we may have been put together for a reason. And of course, the rest is history, as they say, 20-something years later, 20-something recordings later. But so that's kind of how that whole thing. I tell people I literally came out of the woods, because Amherst is, Amherst, UMass is Western Massachusetts, and it's it's in the woods. I said I literally came out of the woods and started playing with people like Art Blakey and McCoy. But because I had some of the greatest cats in jazz as my professors, Max Roach and Archie Shepp and Reggie Workman. I mean, you can't get those guys you couldn't get those guys together in New York. And here I had them on a campus. I mean, Max was living in Amherst, Archie was living in Amherst. I mean, and so it was really cool.
Wow, man, that's a cool story. Wow, that's incredible. Wow. How did your relationship with McCoy?
Yeah, it's like being struck by lightning.
Yeah, like developed through the. How did your relationship with McCoy? I love the trio with Louis Hayes on drums, like mid '80s.
Well,
but developed through the years. I mean, in your eyes and ears.
Well, the first when I first played with him, I played with him from like 1980 to 1982. He let that band go, and then when he formed a trio in '84, he called me and Louis Hayes. But in 1980, the band was John Blake on violin, Joe Ford on saxophone, and the original drummer was George Johnson. And about 3-4 months later, Ronnie Barrage joined the group. Guillermo Franco was on percussion, and that was the group at the time. And by the time I left in '82, Jerry Gonzalez was playing congas and trumpet in the band as well. He let that band go, and then I didn't work with him for 2 years. And then in 1984, he called me and asked me he was putting together a trio with Louis Hayes. And I was like, yeah. I mean, at the time I was playing at a hotel in Boston, playing Michael Jackson tunes on upright while the piano player moonwalked on the piano. So I was yeah, I think I can do that, So when we first got, you know, of course I knew who Louis Hayes was. He didn't really know who I was. So at the first rehearsal, after the first tune, we stop and Louis Hayes goes to McCoy and points to me and says, McCoy, this boy can titty boom, you know, which means that I can swing. It was like, he didn't know who I was. And he was like, wow, this cat's, and, you know, that was to me one of the best musical groups and situations that I was in, because, you know, McCoy and Louis, Louis actually is a year older than McCoy. And I used to call Louis Who's Who in jazz, because a fan would come up with a record that I didn't know that he played on. We were in Europe, and it was a record from that he did with John Lee Hooker, Sam Jones and John Lee Hooker with Louis Hayes. And I was like, wow. What? Yeah. I was like, he said, he looks at me, he signed, he goes, I told you I played with everybody. And he really has. When he was, him and Art Taylor, Louis, I think, hit New York when he was like 17, 18 years old. Oh. And he and Art Taylor were like the new cats, and everybody, they appeared on like everybody's record. But that musical entity with Louis and McCoy was like the best for me, because I was like, you know, I'm younger than those cats. And when they would break into like a swing, I'd be like, oh snap. I could feel the generational difference, you know, because like, you know, these cats come from the same generation, so they're going to play a certain way. So all I could do is just try to be sensitive and just try to fit in with what they were doing. And I learned, you know, a lot from, you know, McCoy and Louis, because Louis had all the bass players I'd studied, Louis had played with or recorded with. So he would give me the, you know, as we would say, the 411, all the information on cats, you know, about their playing, about, you know, some of their personal stuff, and just really, you know, I would, you know, just be asking about everybody. And he you know, it's like, oh yeah, so-and-so could swing, but so-and-so could swing a little bit better, or, you know, his choice of notes where I thought were, you know, was better. And so it was like one of the best musical and personal situations I ever found myself in.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, it's beautiful. I think did you play in Ljubljana with Michael Brecker, with McCoy then? Remember, in Slovenia?
Yes.
It was you,
yes.
right? Yeah, I was on that gig.
That was, you know,
I was on that gig. I love that gig.
In where was that again?
In Ljubljana, in Slovenia. You played in like this open theater. Must have been like mid-90s. Michael Brecker was on tenor, and
96.
Maybe
yeah,
earlier.
Maybe 96 or 96.
96 maybe, yeah.
Yeah, it was in the mid-90s.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michael, that was with Aaron Scott was on drums at that point.
Yeah.
Louis,
how did Michael Brecker enter this group? I mean,
well, Michael entered because I think Michael had just signed with Impulse Records, and McCoy had, I think, returned or something with Impulse, or because I think he was, you know, with John Coltrane, it was on Impulse. And so the record label put McCoy and Michael together, but we did a gig at Yoshi's in Oakland, Berkeley, the old Yoshi's jazz club. And McCoy was doing like a residency, like 1 or 2 weeks a year, every year at the Yoshi's there. And that particular year, they put us together with Michael Brecker, because I didn't know Michael. You know, McCoy didn't really know Michael. I mean, we knew, of course, obviously we knew of him.
We was, yeah.
And Michael is like not only one of the greatest players that ever was, but one of the nicest cats, one of the nicest spirits that you would ever want to definitely be around. And I was a little surprised because, you know, Michael's like, you know, getting all this hype, like he's the second coming of, you know, Train and blah, blah, blah. And Michael's like very humble cat, extremely humble. And at the end of the week, I said, you know, McCoy, I said, Michael's like really, you know, just playing obviously is killing, but he's like just a great spirit. And McCoy goes, yeah. And then after that, we did a record. McCoy's record, featured Michael Brecker, Infinity, and that record won a Grammy, and
Yeah, it's a
Michael won
beautiful
a
record.
Grammy
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
best solo on Impressions. But no, Michael was, I mean, he and I hung tough. He was a really, really great cat. So devastated, when he passed, because he was just such a, like I said, incredible player, but just really a great guy as well.
Yeah, I've heard that from so many guys, yeah, who played with him, and beautiful, yeah. How, Avery, how did in between all this playing with McCoy and obviously other people, how did Unspoken Words happen? That you becoming a band leader, and did you lead bands in between already, or like what's the story behind that record?
Well, see, that it's funny because everybody always associates me with McCoy, but I did a lot of work. I did Unspoken Words in 1988. As a matter of fact, McCoy plays on one tune
Yeah, exactly.
on
Yeah,
that. He plays. I did an arrangement of Blues on the Corner, and he came in and played the tune. He was. I think I'm the only sideman that McCoy ever
exactly.
played on it.
Yeah, I wanted to tell you that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, he had his contemporaries and so forth that he would always play with, but I was the first sideman and only sideman I think that I can think of that he played on that played on my record, and that was on Sunnyside Records, and that record was cool. I really dug it.
Yeah,
It was
beautiful.
great. My first outing as a leader, and well, quite honestly, especially back then, the record industry was, you got the gatekeepers. You still kind of have the gatekeepers, and this is sort of the radical part of me coming out because of Archie Shepp and Max Roach, in that I got tired of sending demos to major labels, and which I had recorded on some of these major labels with McCoy and other people, and I was actually Yusef Lateef is another one of my mentors,
Yeah,
and
I wanted
I
to ask you about
recorded
Yusuf
about
also. Yeah,
8 records. I recorded about 8 records with Yusef, because when Yusef was with Atlantic, and other major labels back in the day, and then in the 80s and 90s he started his own record label,
yeah,
and I had, like I said, I had done about like 8 or 9 records with Yusef because he lives up here in Massachusetts, or he lived up here in Massachusetts, before he passed. And one time I saw Yusef on the street somewhere, and I ran into him, and he goes, Brother Avery, I think you should start your own record label. It was he and Kevin Eubanks, his friend. And Kevin Eubanks said, man, I think this is where the industry is going to go anyway. You might as well start your own label too, And so with the prodding of Eubanks and brother Yusef, I started my own label. I said, well, I keep sending out these demos to the record companies, and they're like, well, it would always be some kind of excuse where you need more experience or something. I'm like, okay, whatever. And I'm the type of person, because of my father, I kind of make my own way. So I started, my own label, my own record label. I was
yeah,
like, I can do this. I mean, first of all, I can make a record, but then second of all, I have a certain amount of skill set. I mean, um, organizational skill sets that that I have, and I've always been of the mindset. And when I used to get on my contemporaries about this, in the 80s and 90s, when we were young and a lot of cats were coming up, I was like, we play some of the most complicated, sophisticated, and cerebral and spiritual music on the planet. And if I can figure out what Oscar Peterson is playing intellectually, I can pretty much figure out anything. I just have to take those same neurons and move it over to another aspect. So I felt that I can be my own publicist. I can be my own radio promotional cat. I can, I can organize things. It's just like the record company. It takes a lot more work, especially back then. I mean, I've done every aspect of the business. I've taken, back then it would have been albums.
Yeah.
Now it was CDs. I would have taken them and wrapped them up and sent them individually to the radio stations, calling them up, trying to get played.
I mean, cool that you mentioned your own label, because I wanted to ask you about that. I've noticed you've done so much. Nowadays it's easier, but you started like mid 90s already, right? So that was completely different, like you said.
Around 93.
Yeah, incredible.
19. As I was talking about the label, starting my label, with the prodding of Kevin Eubanks and Yusef Lateef, I recorded my first record. And as I mentioned before, thematically, I always like to have a theme. And I think that, as an artist, I try to write what it is that I know about. And one of the things that I knew about is family, because of my mother and father. I come from a large family. I'm number 6 of 8. Whoa. Some people come from large families and the experience is not great, but mine was a great experience. And just thinking about all the values and the love that my parents gave me, I actually got 3 records out of that. I did Extended Family 1, and then I did Extended Family 2, Thoughts of My Ancestors, thinking about not just my immediate family, but thinking about the folks who I never met. It's like it took umpteenth generations to make who you are. You just weren't dropped from heaven. All those things that were. And these are people that like we're alive now. There's people, our offspring, who will never meet us, but have some sort of, but have a connection to us. I mean, how many times have you been in a family situation and your mother looks at you and goes, yeah, your uncle so-and-so had that same characteristics as you do, or your grand uncle, you're like, oh, okay, I see where the stuff comes from now. So that was Extended Family 2, Thoughts of My Ancestors, and then Extended Family 3 was some family values, just the basic values that our family, that my mother and father taught us. So those are my first 3 records. No, I take that back. I did Extended Family 1, Extended Family 2, and then I did a duo, violin and bass, with John Blake. From when I met John from working with McCoy, and we became good friends, and our backgrounds are similar. Both our mothers were piano players in the church, and we come from a musical family. And then I did Extended Family 3, and then I just continued. I think I have 12.
Beautiful, man.
Or 13.
Yeah.
And I mean, I like it because it allows me, obviously, total freedom. I mean, I'm the CEO. I'm the A&R person. I'm the janitor. I'm everybody.
Yeah.
So the left brain argues with the right side of the brain, and I pretty much can do do what I want.
Yeah.
And I have a publicist. I have a radio promotional, and
Beautiful.
And now, like you said, now back when I started that back in in '93, a lot of people weren't doing that. I mean, the people that I would look into, well, number one was Yusef Lateef, because he started his. Betty Carter started her label back in I think late '70s, and then eventually she went, and I think she sold her catalog to Verve.
Yep.
And Max Roach and Charles Mingus started a record label back, I think it was back in the '50s. It didn't pretty much didn't go anywhere. And then people forget that it was a record label that was artist owned by Charles Tolliver and oh good Lord, Stanley Cowell. It was called Strata East.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was
exactly.
That was
yeah.
Right. Strata East was artist owned. It was I think to this day it's still the largest record label that was owned by artists. I think Gil Scott Heron had a hit on that label. I think it was In the Bottle. That it was a hit for Gil Scott. And so those were, I'm looking, I've always been the type of person, if a human being is doing it, and so this is not to belittle anything that a person is doing, but if they can do it, then it's like Bannister when he broke the 4 minute mile. Once he did it, I was like, oh, it can be done. So if somebody's doing something, I'm average intelligence, physical abilities, and if a human being has done it, then it always encourages me. Then that means it can be done.
Yeah.
So the fact that Strata East was a very successful artist-owned label, it didn't end well, but that's another story. And then Yusef Lateef was doing it at the time, so and he encouraged me as well. So it's not cheap, that's for sure.
Oh man, yeah, I know.
But if I could have had an extra vacation home in on Cape Cod in Massachusetts, but that's a whole nother story. But
Yeah.
and now everybody has to do it,
Yeah.
and I don't even know about the music industry anymore. I don't even know if there is an industry anymore. I don't even know what to call it. And I have a record label, and I'm like, I don't know, because everything is streamed. There's no
It's terrible.
yeah, you're just doing it as I don't mean to be discouraging to anybody, but I'm spending money. It's an expensive business card now.
Yep, it's true. What you said, yeah.
As a creative person, I gotta,
You
I
gotta
gotta do it.
I know what you mean.
Because, like I said, I'm not gonna let anybody tell me what it is that I can and cannot do. Especially I supposedly live in America, the land of the home of the brave, and they tell you can do anything that you want. And if you didn't really mean that, you shouldn't have told me that, because I believe that. And so, and I've told my kids, I said, Dad, Dad's going to do what he wants to do in life, as long as you're doing something positive. My parents always supported whatever we did as kids, as long as you're doing something positive. You're doing something negative and it's going to embarrass the family, no, you're not going to get any support. But if you're putting your best foot forward and you're adding to the you're adding positive and good to the world. Yeah, I told my kids, you were fortunate that you were born in this family, but you were unfortunate that you were born in this family, because a lot of it is expected of you.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be productive people and put something back into society.
Beautifully put. Yeah. Avery, since not to take more of your time, I just wanted to ask you, like, with this record coming out in June, and what else is on the schedule for you gig-wise? I mean, do you have some upcoming projects or gigs, or any travels to Europe soon also, or?
Yes, we've been doing this. I put together a McCoy Tyner legacy band with his estate, with McCoy's son. And we did our first gig back in November in Strasbourg, France.
Oh, really? Okay.
And it went very well, as a matter of fact. And I think they're booking things for July now in Europe. Right now, we're just doing the project in Europe. We got Chico Freeman on saxophone, Ronnie Barrages on drums, Steve Torres on trombone, and Antonio Ferrero on sitting on the chair of McCoy. So we're going to be, Bulgaria, I think, in France and Germany, some other places, but I think we might be there about 3 weeks.
Beautiful.
In Europe. And then my 400 project, originally the whole thing was supposed to be the smaller group that I recorded, with the choir, and my sextet. But last year I did it with a small chamber orchestra in Springfield, and now we're in talks about bringing the project with the full symphony and the symphony chorus and my chorus and my sextet. So that might be happening. There's a possibility, Hilford, we're in talks about that. That might be happening soon in June.
Beautiful.
So that's and actually I'm in the process of writing. Yeah, I mean, I've written some of the parts, for chamber orchestra, but now I've got to expand it to orchestra. That was always the plan, to do it with the smaller group that I recorded, and eventually do it with a large orchestra and choir, and because the live performance also has a video slideshow component with it as well.
Right.
And if we do it with the symphony, we'll also have a narrator as well. So it's
Wow.
a lot of people on stage and big project. I kind of like big projects.
Yeah. Amazing, man. Wow, that's fantastic. So it's gonna be a busy year and a nice year project-wise. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's going to be yeah. Last year was pretty crazy. I did 2 projects with the symphony last year. One was with the chamber orchestra, and one was with a full orchestra.
Wow.
Last June, and one was in July. So yeah, just a lot of stuff going on. A lot of stuff
Fantastic.
going on, which is good,
Yeah.
So where are you at anyway?
I'm in Slovenia. I'm in Europe, like
Okay.
2 hours south of Vienna, kind of from Austria. So
Okay.
yeah. So I'll definitely catch
Yeah.
you in the summer. I'll check the schedules of you guys and try to
Yeah.
catch the
Yeah, they're
latest.
still, like I said, they're still putting it together.
Yeah.
So
Beautiful.
it's a good group. And we're playing
Oh,
McCoy's music. What
man,
else can
killing group. Yeah. Avery, I will not take more of your time, but thanks so much for sharing some of these thoughts and about your playing and composing and McCoy and everything, and really appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure. Let me know when this is going to be out.
I will. I'll send you a link.
Shoot me an email.
I'll send you a link. Yeah. And keep it up like
Great.
that. So amazing.
All right. Stay
Okay.
well, brother.
You too. Bye.
All
Ciao.
right.
Ciao.